Ruby Ridge is one of those things that people, if you're my age or older, you have a good understanding of. And what's really interesting being at Gonzaga is that less than 100 miles from where we're at, Ruby Ridge took place. But what do we really know about what the impact of Ruby Ridge was on Spokane? In this documentary, you'll get to know what it actually was like in the 90s for people living in Spokane. To give you a little brief snippet of what we're looking at, I have an interview with Mike Fitzsimmons.
The whole culture of North Idaho and the white supremacy and the Aryan nations and all the different things that were going on kind of simultaneously, the order and all those groups, and was now all gone from North Idaho at the time. The national press and even some of the local press pretty much meshed these all together as though it was all one common movement, which it was not at all. This was, in fact, Randy Weaver was a completely independent event. I mean, what happened on Ruby Ridge was not even directly related to any of these other things. And when it happened, the impact was significant because obviously people were worried about the reputation it would bring to the region. North Idaho was concerned about that, had been for a number of years because of the Aryan Nations proximity. The local press really, they were aware of it, they covered it, but they really weren't aware of the significance of what was going on here. A lot of the things that got reported were actually either underreported or untrue. I mean, we didn't realize exactly what the federal strength was at the time, what they were attempting to do, how much of a big deal the feds had made this from the Justice Department on. We didn't realize that locally until all of these law enforcement officials from the Marshal's office and the FBI and everybody started showing up, and the sharpshooters and the all that sort of thing. I mean, then the standoff in the compound occurred, and of course, I remember none of the press could get right close to it. They weren't permitted to fly a helicopter over it with cameras. They had to be X number of, thousands of feet away, and so we had this odd, distant camera shot from a nearby mountain peak showing the cabin, which showed absolutely nothing because there was no definition as to what was going on, and so that was the constant picture you'd see day and night on all of the television stations, and of course the newspapers were a little bit better at covering the story. But the locals in Naples, Idaho, in the neighborhood of where this was happening, which that became sort of the meeting place, the general store there at Naples, right off of Highway 95. They resented all this. They resented everybody being around there. They resented the big deal that everybody was making of this thing because they didn't see it as a big deal at all. It was just a neighbor who wanted to be left alone, leave him be. So later on we discovered the issues about the sawed-off shotgun and the way in which Weaver was basically set up, and the entrapment aspects of the story. But we didn't know that going in, and we didn't know that while it was happening. But there were a lot of people that felt that it was a case of federal overkill, and there were a lot of sign-carrying protesters down by the general store in Naples, as I recall, and they were upset every time a federal vehicle would drive by, and made a big deal of it. And they had a landing zone there also for the helicopters that the law enforcement people were using, and folks expressed their displeasure practically on a daily basis, and sucked in a bunch of people from all over the country and all over the Northwest who were basically, touting God knows all kinds of causes having to do with, even remotely related to this sort of a situation. It was a circus. It was a circus.
That was just a brief, quick sit down with Mike. He has so much more to talk about, including what the atmosphere was like in Idaho at the time, beyond just Ruby Ridge, looking at things like devil worshiping and kind of how that history of Ruby Ridge in Idaho still taints Idaho to this day, at least the northern part. J.D. Bricker, GUTV.